So for those of you that are visiting the gallery, we record our meetings and we publish them online.
So thank everybody for coming. I'd like to call our committee of the whole meeting on Wednesday, November 16th to order. We respectfully acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the traditional territory of the tribal people of Canada. They have approval of the agenda as presented. John and Dennis, all in favor? So thank you, Jay and Richard and Shauna for coming. Do you want to just go around the table and introduce yourselves and council? I mean, we've done it already, but just formally.
Yeah, if anyone doesn't know me, I'm Brian Texmo, the
He's the new boy.
new one, yeah, the new one, I'm told, yeah. And I know Shauna, so Richard,
Yes,
okay,
so I am Richard Davis. I'm also the new one. So
yeah,
I've been with BHP for a while, but I was in their petroleum group. And this year I've come over to what we call our legacy assets as the manager for Canada. So all of our sites across Canada.
Yeah, and then I'm Shauna Snyder. I'm the site superintendent for the Island Copper Mine. And I oversee the care and maintenance and studies on behalf of BHP.
And I'm Jay Hartley, Principal Corporate Affairs for BHP Legacy Assets across Canada, like Richard. And so Island Copper is one of my remits, as they say. So I do a fancy title for government relations, Indigenous relations, community relations, and social investment. That's my portfolio.
I'm 30 years with the BHP. I'm shortly retired.
But I'm a counselor with the district of Port Hardy.
Dennis Dugas, counselor of the District of Port Hardy.
And I'm the mayor, Pat Corbett Batt. And I don't know if you know, but I worked at BHP for 2.5 years. You might not recognize me on the cover of the Island Copper book, but I know I was a permed hair. Permed hair, and I was very fun. A baby.
Janet Dorver, counselor. My dad was the bus driver to BHP.
So thanks very much for coming. And actually over here in our audience is a former counselor with the District of Port Hardy, Rick Marquardt.
Former Saskatchewan resident as well.
So thanks.
And I'm Fred Robertson. I'm a counselor.
Fred.
And when I first came to Port Hardy, I used to take my classes for tours out to the mine site.
I took that tour with you.
That's
As a student.
As a student, yeah.
Not wanting to date anybody along the way here.
Not at all, no.
Oh, well, thank you for making the time for us. Really appreciate it. Especially because I know running a town is not an easy job. So there's a lot going on. As BHP, we like to keep in touch with our communities, make sure that people know what we're up to so that we don't have to make things up. So, we like to come on an annual basis. Once upon a time, say when you were working there, we would have been here much more frequently, but at this point, we're in care and maintenance. And I know that you've heard a lot of this before, but we're just keeping in mind there may be new people. And so that's why, and apologies to Dennis and Pat because they heard the exact same thing yesterday. But maybe you'll have new questions. So, right? Yeah, you dreamt on that last night. So I'm just going to flip here, just make sure I'm doing the right thing. Yeah. The disclaimer slide is just to say that, anything you hear today should not make you run out and buy BHP stuff or sell them, right? So, yeah, no influence intended. So, we'll just go through who's BHP, you know this anyway, but just very briefly, we'll touch on a number of things, and Sean is going to talk about the site and what's happening there, and I'll talk a little bit about what we've been doing in community, and you can ask any questions you want. And okay, all right, Richard's going to kick it off, right?
So it sounds like we are all familiar with BHP. I do want to say that when we say our purpose of bringing people and resources together, there's something behind that, and hopefully you guys have experienced that, but, and we'll touch on some of this stuff today, but BHP, works to solve climate change issues. We, aim to produce clean, affordable energy around the world, and provide materials that build infrastructure around the world. We support people and communities where we work. One of the things in closer to home with Island Copper, is part of our legacy assets portfolio, and these are former mines, that now we are stewarding environmental projects, care and maintenance. And care and maintenance is not, you know, a mop bucket, and it is maintaining these sites in an environmentally friendly way. And I like to say, hey, what we do is we produce clean water, and we are restoring the land back to a natural state. And Shauna will share some of that with you today. And then our charter, our values. I don't know if these values were the same values that you guys had when you worked with mine. But yesterday I shared, Dennis and Pat would remember, I said, you know, my view is that corporations and companies are like people. You know, we do have we set goals. New Year's is coming up. Maybe it's a good time for me to set some goals again. Priorities. We all have priorities, but all this is usually driven by our values, and this is deeply ingrained in who we are. And these values mature over the years. So probably these values have matured and changed a bit since seven fellows founded BHP 1851. But today, these values drive everything we do. They drive the way we gather here tonight and we present to you. They drive our business decisions, how we move forward with Island Copper, how we move forward as a company. And it drives what our goals and our priorities are. So we hope that these become evident in all of your dealings with us and everything that you see with us in the news and hear from us around town. And, you know, we have some of these that sometimes we get wrong. Sometimes we get something wrong, and Jay will probably share some stuff with you today that, you know, where we haven't always gotten it right. And part of accountability is us coming forward and recognizing that and how we respond to it. So anyway, it's probably all I need to say about our values, but you get it.
Yeah. And so now I'm going to talk about Island Copper, the site. And so as a starting point, although some of you could probably give me a better history than I can give you, I'm going to start with the history and then where we are today. So there's two pictures on the slide. The one on the left side is during the operating period. So the mine operated from 1971 to 1995 with primary reclamation activities happening in 1996 to 2000. And so it was an open pit copper mine that had the revenue metals being copper, gold, silver, rhenium, and molybdenum. And so one major item that you'll see is that open pit, and just for scale, it's about 350 meters deep and then 1 kilometer across and 2 kilometers long. And then you'll see the post-closure photo on the right-hand side of the slide. And one of the stark differences there was that as part of the treatment system that was built after the closure of the site, the open pit was flooded with seawater from Rupert Inlet and then capped with fresh water from Marble River to create a meromictic pit lake, which is a fancy way of saying that there's multiple layers in that pit lake with different chemistry that don't intermix. And there's going to be another slide on that, and I could nerd out about that part all day, but I will move through it. So yeah, next slide, thanks, Jay. And just some more historical photos. So on the upper left-hand side, you'll see the open pit being flooded, and then more of what it looks like today on that right side of the flooded pit with Rupert Inlet in the background. And that was flooded through what we call our flood channel. So on the bottom left-hand side, you'll see what used to be an emergency tailings pond that was then developed into that flood channel. And you can see the differences in that from back during operations to more of that post-closure state with the pit lake and the open pit in the upper left-hand corners of each of those photos. Next slide. Thank you. So this is a map of what the site looks like today from an aerial point of view. So there's a lot going on there with the topography and everything, and it's a bit difficult to read, but some of the major items that you can see from our infrastructure are that pit lake. We also have reclaimed rock dumps throughout, like around the site, and it's harder to read, but there's the north dump, west, south, northwest, and beach dump. And then those lines that you would see on the map, like the purple and red and other lines, are water management structures. So one of the primary things that we do at the site today is take mine impacted water that's coming through those waste rock dumps or just rain that's coming onto the site, capturing it in those water management structures and bringing it all to the pit lake, which is our treatment system, so that it can be treated and then exfiltrated off the site. Slide. And this is just a schematic of the overall how the treatment system looks. So the best way I like to describe it, and it's because I like dessert, but I like to think of it as a 3-layer cake, because there's 3 different tiers of water, and in between those you could consider them the icing, but it's what we call a pycnocline, which is a density gradient, and that's what gives it the meromictic structure where they don't intermix. And so part of why that's important for treating the water at the site is that middle and bottom layer have sulfidic conditions or sulfides in that water that help take those dissolved metals that are from that mine impacted water and drop those to the bottom of the pit lake so that that water is cleaner. And on the upper layer of the pit lake, we actually add fertilizer, which then creates a phytoplankton bloom. And those phytoplankton cells adsorb to the exterior of that cell the dissolved metals in that layer of water and drop to the bottom of the pit lake as well. So those are a few of the functions of how that semi-passive treatment system is actually treating that mine impacted water so that it's clean to be exfiltrated off of the site. And a lot of like the inputs that you'll see there are many acronyms of the site of different ditches and water management structures that convey that water into the pit treatment system.
Oh, the effluent that comes off the top layer there, is that pumped up then?
No, so
Gravity
actually,
feeds up?
yes, it gravity feeds out through, yes, exactly, through our beach dump. And then also through what's called the causeway exfiltration berm, which we have a photo on another slide.
Mhm.
So it slowly exfiltrates through those different systems.
You don't add anything to those different areas before it goes out there then?
No, yeah, it's all, just one of the ways that we manage the pit lake is with those pycnoclines, we keep them at a specific level because we pump water from the middle to the top layers so that we can keep that layer of icing or that pycnocline at a certain depth below the height of the water, so that only the top layer water, which is our cleanest water in the pit lake, exfiltrates through those 2 different areas. Yeah.
But there will be monitoring
Yeah.
of that water prior to it exiting into Rupert.
To the ocean, yeah.
Yeah, but other than the fertilizer addition and just making sure all of the water gets there, there's nothing else that we're doing at those 2 areas. Yeah. Next slide, please. So, perfect question. Thanks for setting me up for my next slide. The causeway exfiltration berm is on the upper right-hand portion. So that's the downstream side. The water would exfiltrate. So the pit lake's on the other side and it would come through that structure and into the flood channel, which is the water that you're seeing on that photo. And then on the upper left-hand side where you have 3 people in the photo, that's the part of the flood channel that's closest to Rupert Inlet. And then the bottom right is a photo of the pit lake. And the bottom left is the resident elk herd that we have on site that we're very, lucky to have there.
When you talk about the water entering into the old mines, the area, like actually the pond that you're treating, does it have a big difference when you get those atmospheric rain or rivers or whatever, and then get all this heavy rain and it comes in there?
Yes.
How do you manage that then?
Yeah,
That's
and
pretty difficult, I'm sure.
Yeah, and that's a great question, because in the summer, it's generally like we don't have as much water coming into the system, and so the pit lake gets a bit lower. But in the winter, when we do have the heavy rains, there's more of that water going through those reclaimed rock dumps. So we get more of those dissolved metals coming into the pit lake, and that's where we're actively sampling and monitoring that area to make sure that we're adding enough of the fertilizer, that we're treating enough of those metals so that we're meeting our permit conditions and can safely exfiltrate that water. But you're absolutely right. How much water is coming into the system is a major factor. And part of that is those conveyance structures, the ditches, culverts, and pump stations are designed to manage specific amounts of water to like a design of 1 in 100 year events or 1 in 200 year events, based on which ones they are and where they would.
Have you been able to maintain that when we've had those big rainfalls?
Yes.
So
yes.
far, so good?
Yeah, so far so good. And that's where we do design them to certain storm events, thinking like, oh, that's on a risk-based approach. And yeah, luckily we haven't had anything go wrong, so we're, yeah.
But with the increased rain, increased water coming through, it's increased treatment of fertilizer to generate more phytoplankton to take those metals out.
And that's all done at the MLL, right?
Yes, which,
Yeah.
yeah, is our middle layer lifting pump station. One of our other many acronyms we really love. And that pump station helps us to take water from the middle layer and bring it to the top layer to keep that layer of icing or that picnicline at a certain depth, as well as adds the fertilizer into the system.
And then like he's talking about like the rainwater, like, you know, atmospheric rivers, the SDSCS is the one that has that huge diesel pump that's like
Yes.
designed, sits there, ready to go, tested all the time. If that event were to happen and a float is triggered, it basically, that thing can take care of anything. And I've seen it in action. It's unreal.
Yeah, that pump is a monster.
Yes.
It's great. Yes. So
Pretty
exactly.
cool. Like there's so much like redundancy in the system, especially at the south dump.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're lucky enough to have Brian that helps us with a lot of our electrical work at the site.
I know a lot of the process.
I just out of curiosity, when was the last time any of you were on the mine site, like in the mine site?
Besides mine.
Yes.
Yeah.
2000.
2000, okay.
Yeah, it's been longer than that for me.
Way longer than that for me.
And,
It's still open. when
and I have a
been a while.
short question. From the buildings, I guess you must pump it up the hill into the,
Like the one place that we're pumping water is that south dump pump station.
what about, because I noticed you had a purple line going to the buildings,
Oh, to
where the buildings were.
Could we go back to that map so I can make sure I address it? And then Fred, I did hear you, so we'll go back.
Yeah.
on this.
See, you see right in the middle of the, where it belongs, the BHP, and Port Hardy site, that's that light colored area.
The gray area?
Sorry, oh, the.
Yeah, is the pumps in here?
No, there
Because
are.
that's the hill.
Yeah, so there are not pumps in there, but we
Ditching.
assume that there's some ditch water that comes from that
Comes
area
back.
and back into
Yeah,
our
from
site.
the top end of here.
Yeah, and so that's on a hill, so they'll
Yeah.
actually run and then come off the side of
Oh,
the
okay.
hill over there. Yeah, so there's no pumping over there, but this is a good point. Thanks for standing up with me. This is the middle layer lifting pump station.
Okay.
Where we lift that water from the middle to the top.
Yeah.
And then this is the south dump pump station, which is
Okay.
really one of the major places that we can't get the gravity to.
Yeah,
work
that's
for
right,
us, so
because
that's
we got that hill there too.
Yes, and so we've, like, over time, they found a way to manage it where the water flows just from gravity that way. But this south dump is the place that we have to actively pump it through an HDPE
Yeah.
pipe, yeah. So,
This is where we had the fuel tanks down the center.
And what
So
size
just
is it?
interrupting just for a second, maybe a tour might be in.
I just wrote that
Okay.
down. Well, that's what I was asking, because I thought, gosh, if you haven't been there in 12 years, that's a long time.
Yeah.
I've not done a
Yeah.
lot of changes.
Yeah,
So,
so that'd be
that's
great.
Yeah,
Yeah, it'd be nice, I'd like to see
see
the
it
show.
again,
yeah.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Do you allow tours of other arranged groups, like
We-
generally? or-
We haven't been, at least since I've been here, and part of that was COVID. I know in the past, my predecessor had set up a tour with, I believe, the fire department at one point as part of like
Safety is.
safety and emergency response and things like that, but, yeah, it kind of depends on the ask, because it ends up being me that gives all the tours. There's only one of me. So,
So
yeah,
it's not impossible, but it's not necessarily a given.
yeah,
Yeah, like if like 6 bus loads show up at the
Right.
gate kind of thing, be, yeah, we'd want,
Yeah.
it would be more difficult because it's just Shauna, but yeah, we'll entertain,
Mhm.
you know, prearranged for good reasons kind of thing, right? So, yeah, I think one for the mayor and council would be a great idea.
Yep.
And Heather.
We did take a drive out there, probably within the last year, and of course we couldn't get in, but the photographs that you could take there of like this apocalyptic kind of, is the road being taken over by all the bushes and stuff, but there's still the center line. And so you can kind of see how, you know, it was used, so it kind of seems very like mysterious, very ghosty, right?
yeah.
As you're going in.
And it grows in really quickly. We do brush cut. We do
Yes.
brush cut.
Especially if you go past the site.
I talked about going past, where,
Yeah,
like,
going
Yeah.
past to the industrial park.
The former plant site, yeah.
Yes, that's where the road's really growing in.
Yes,
Yeah. And then Fred, sorry, did you try and ask something or were you good? Okay.
No, sorry, I was just saying the closest I've been actually to the site is from the Rupert Inlet side for a long time.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
good to know.
Yes.
I can see, Trina Smith, our
Yes.
counselor is also online, so.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Trina.
Hi, oh, wait, no. Hi, Trina.
I'm doing good.
Sorry.
Thank you.
and you gotta look that way.
That orb in the middle.
Yeah.
Did they change?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and the site is in closure care and maintenance now, but you saw some of the befores and the afters. So at closure, we did reclaim those rock dumps and recontoured them, added till, and then have revegetated them so that it looks more of a natural landform. And then we flooded that open pit, as we talked about a bit earlier. Now we're in post-closure and we're focused on maintaining the site and our infrastructure, as well as doing our sampling activities and reporting to the government. And then we do studies on the site as well that are continuous and practical improvements. So 2 of the things that we are working on right now, to give you an idea of some of what we would be working on, are we had identified some roads that are no longer used on the site. And so we're reclaiming those and trying to have the more vegetation come back, because the other item we're working on is called our vegetation research trials. And those we've found on different areas of the site, we're not seeing some of the diversity of plant species that we'd like to see for native species. So we are doing a study that's looking at multiple different variables to understand how we could promote the growth of those species. And so in this photo, you'll see some tree saplings that were planted. And in the background, you'll see maybe some fencing if you look really closely at that upper left-hand corner.
The flags on it.
Yeah, with the flags. So one of the things there is that we're hoping that because we've planted those species and then put the fence there, that the elk and the deer won't get to them before they can grow, is one of the variables that we're looking at.
Imagine
So-
during the rut season, the elk probably made some fun with that fence like that.
I know, we only have one fencing issue so far, so I'm gonna.
Some
knock
big
on
bulls
wood.
hanging around there.
Yes, yeah. So we're hoping that it holds out, but that is one thing, and that'll be a study that we look at over the next 3 to 5 years to understand how we can do better in the future for those areas. This one, please.
Were the elk actually brought into that area or did they just
No, they
migrate
just
there themselves?
naturally, yeah,
Naturally?
yeah.
Wow. They like it there.
I hope so. I love having them there.
Tons of them there and
Yeah.
tons of deer. Like, it's such a rich habitat it's like an oasis for animals there. It's
Wow.
just driving around there when I'm working there, it's just
Yeah,
animals, which is a good sign.
lots
obviously.
of bears.
Yeah.
There's always lots of bears.
I see
in that
bears
area,
there, more or less, just tons of elk. I've seen cougars there
Yeah.
before, like, long time ago, I don't mean to go into story time, but a long time ago, like when I was an apprentice, even with K&K, went there. And, when we went there early in the morning, we'd seen 2 cougars jump across the road early in the morning. So obviously, it's just, when you see predators there, then there's lots of.
A lot of black-tailed deer.
Tons of black-tailed deer there, yeah. Yeah, it's rich with animals. It's pretty cool, actually, when you're there, just to see how much there is.
Yeah. And luckily I haven't seen any cougars. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I don't think it's cool.
And
But-
we do march the elk out on tours, just so you.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, so it is very nice biodiversity that we have. And the other things that we do just as part of our care and maintenance and our environmental stewardship at the sites are the water management and treatment that we talked about in the pit lake, and then monitoring of our site water wells, flows and quality, which all goes into our annual environmental reports to the government as well. And yeah, inspecting and maintaining our infrastructure. So a lot of the times those inspections will drive any maintenance activities that we do at our pumps, pond stations, or pumps, ponds, and different like ditches and roads and other infrastructure. And then another, like kind of switching gears to a project that we're hoping to work on in the near term with BHP, is what we call our Foreshore remediation project. So you saw on that map, there was the former plant site. As part of that, there's some infrastructure that BHP still has, and it's in Rupert Inlet, and it's in the marine portion of the inlet, and I'll have some photos after this slide of that. But it's a former barge ramp and ship loader that they've deteriorated over time, so they're posing a safety concern, and BHP would like to remove those from the marine infrastructure, and also had done a past study that showed that there's elevated copper concentrations in the cobbles underneath that infrastructure, likely from when the mine was operating. So the other intent would be to remediate those cobbles, and then replace them, take out all that marine infrastructure, and then release those water lot leases back to the government. And there is a typo on this slide. That was my bad, but the current status is we're ongoing with the engagement, and anticipating and hoping that work is underway in winter of 2023 to 24 timeline, not 2034. We're trying to hurry it up. So apologies for that typo. And then the next slide should have those photos. So just on, yeah, the left-hand side is some of that infrastructure, the barge ramp, and then on the right-hand side is that ship loader. So that's so that you understand which infrastructure that is. If you're in the inlet, that's what we're.
So basically, I guess when we were loading the ship loaders, due to currents and stuff, it kind of moved its way down to the barge ramp.
Yeah, and honestly, I think most of the copper, like the elevated copper concentrations, weren't found near the barge ramp. They were more around the ship loader.
Yes.
So, but
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The ship load. Well, the ship
Yeah.
loader was the main source, but I'm thinking with the tide action, it could have flowed because it's light enough that it would have floated on top of the water and probably heading it up in the barge ramp area.
yeah, and that would be one thing that, like, honestly, we have a project manager, Brittany, who also works in the local area, and she could tell you exactly where it's at. I just have
Yeah.
the general idea, so I couldn't tell you exactly where it's at, but
I
it could
think
be.
most of the concentrate is around the ship loaders.
It is, well,
Yeah.
basically where the ship loader is, because, you know, over time,
done the same
you had
thing
different,
throughout the area.
different collection ideas and stuff
Yes.
like that. And the very first year that ship loader broke it, and
No way. That would have been bad.
That would've
I'm
been
sure.
Some of that infrastructure, is it out now?
No, so we haven't removed anything yet.
so none of that is, it's still there, eh?
Yes.
Yes, because we. have
That's
to
the
do-
oldest building, you know, on the site,
Oh, yes,
the ship loader.
yeah. I would not have known that, so
Why it
thank
has
you,
to go.
John. I'm like,
That was secondhand. That's the only thing that was secondhand at the mine site.
okay. See, this is where I said you would know more than I did about history. Yeah, so nothing has been removed yet because we are still working on the permitting and consultation process, but we're hoping to work within that time frame in the previous slide.
I thought that would have been gone by now, but
We're working every day on it. And then another thing that we have, like BHP focuses on, is our emergency response. So we do an internal BHP annual emergency response drill with our teams, just so that we are, more prepared and trained in the event of a real emergency. And we're like, I personally am open if there are ways that I can get involved with your community drills. I am going to join remotely on the District of Port Hardy's upcoming meeting on, I believe, the 28th. So If you all are ever, keen to have more help there, I can volunteer my time. And then we do, like, if BHP were to potentially do a larger scale public facing drill in the future, if you all are keen to be involved in that, would love to talk to you about that as well. And the portion of this, the right-hand side of the slide, is just how BHP internally manages our emergency response structure, which is our field response team, so the people in the local area. And then as the severity of the incident increases, we engage other teams like the incident, emergency, or crisis management teams.
And just for your information, on December 8th is the regional emergency.
Okay, December
Okay.
8th.
Yeah, and that's gonna be in Port McNeil.
Okay, and so I'm gonna be out of town, but if there's a way to join remotely, I would love to.
Oh, and I'll check into it. Just send me a little email as a
Okay.
reminder, and I'll make sure I ask, because I've just been informed that there's some changes down there.
Yeah, absolutely. I will email you.
But it's gonna be on that date.
Okay, thank you. And then, that's it for you. Yeah, that's it for me. So,
We met with the deputy fire chief Monday.
yes,
Yeah, so we met with,
Gavin.
Gavin.
Smo, yes, and we've also met with people at the regional district. The last time I was in town, we went just to talk about, what's their interest, what do they do
Yeah.
what do they got available, and they asked us questions too, just to, start to
Yeah,
get to know
good.
and make those connections.
Yes.
So I'm gonna talk a little bit about community. It's not very long, but just to say that we don't abandon communities either. So we remain the community, just a different kind of look than to when it was operating, right? So you definitely don't want to see us every month. But probably, you would like to know what's going on. And so we try to keep that line of communication open. And some of the things we do to understand communities, we do a lot of social research, right? So we recently did Ipsos did a poll. We do them all over the world every 2 to 3 years at every site. And it gives us kind of an idea of what people are thinking, what the issues are. We do desktop type research as well, and we do human rights impact assessments. And then we meet with people, right? So that gives you a really good idea of kind of what's going on. But I thought I'd just share some of the results from the survey, and this is specific to Island Copper and the area around Island Copper. So they would have gone into Port McNeil, Port Alice, and Port Hardy likely, and some of the other small places in terms of the random calls, and then they did interviews as well. So these are just some of the results, low awareness of BHP, but that's because, we've been closed for 25 years. That kind of makes sense, right? But we are trusted as a company. People trust us to do the right thing. They like the fact that we are good managers of water and water stewards. So that was kind of a surprise to me. I mean, that's nice to hear, right? When you hear that. And they do believe that we still provide support for local business. And then some of the issues, the big concerns generally that people have, and you're all elected officials, so you know this, but the cost of living is number one for people. Addiction and drugs in Port Hardy, different than in other places where we operate. Healthcare or access to healthcare because you're in a remote area, and I've heard all the nightmare stories about the emerge here, and I live in a similar community with similar issues, so I know what that's like. Remoteness is very difficult, and housing. So those were some of the big issues for people, top of mind. And then to do with Island Copper, it's really about environment, the quality of water, access. Like people wonder, what are you going to do with that place? We are going to steward that place for a very, very, very long time, but people are interested in accessing the area. And then safety, in terms of what happens if, right, if there's an issue. So that's good to know, because then we can address those things with people when we talk to them. And then we're also interested in hearing, what your issues are as a council, right? What do you grapple with the most in Port Hardy? Besides lack of resources, because that's everywhere, right? But what are your top issues? I'd be interested for you to let us know that. We're done.
Maybe identify them.
Yeah. So the engagement, annual, and the kind of, we talk about what our current interests are as well as what's going on the site, right? So right now, Richard mentioned that, and so did Shauna, emergency response, climate change adaptation. How do we contribute to that? How do we contribute to decarbonization? And how do we become better stewards of water by using water less? Those are our goals. And we have goals by, 2050 and 2030 that we're trying to attain. One of the other things kind of interesting is the gender balance within our company. So mining traditionally a very male dominated industry, and we've had quite a bit of success at raising the level of parity, gender parity. I think we're at 33% right now, female. And whereas a couple of years back it was about 26. So making some real strides with that, which is really great. Getting young women into, like Shauna, right, into the business. And then Indigenous engagement. And so, and this is one of the areas where we did not get it right, and this is about the past. And we all know, Canada, we're dealing with that from coast to coast. So recently we've put out a new statement on Indigenous peoples. I'm happy to share it if you're interested in reading. It's very short, it's 2 pages. And we're also developing a reconciliation action plan for Canada for all of BHP's operations. So that'll look at all kinds of different things about integration and, how do you provide more opportunity? How do you raise levels of employment, access to contracts, things like that, where there hasn't been that kind of access in the past. So those are the kinds of things we'll be focusing on. I know you read the paper, so on the 20th of September, we made a public apology to the Quatsino First Nation, and it was requested by the Quatsino First Nation. We didn't just all of a sudden decide to do that. So that, over the years of dialogue we've had very, I'm gonna say, inconsistent relationship, even though they're the closest community to the mine. And we didn't act in a way that we would today. Our standards are much, much different than they were in the 70s, and they were across Canada. It's not exclusive to BHP or to Island Copper, right? And so we did offer the apology to the community publicly. We heard from the community. Everyone got up to speak. It was very, very interesting and enlightening for us to hear firsthand that kind of sadness, that the grief that is a result of the years of not being engaged the way they should have been. And so we're trying to change that, reset the relationship. We know that you don't come in on the 20th of September and make an apology, and the next month we're all, holding hands, right? This is a long-term investment by BHP. It's a slow process, but we're really committed to that. We also talked to the KFN and the GN as well, but not, not in the way we would with QFN because they're so. The other thing we do is we do invest in communities. So we do have a social investment program. For the legacy assets, we never really had much of a budget, but that's changed over the last 2 years. So those are the kinds of categories we look at. They're very broad, so you can fit a lot of things in any of those categories, really. There's no formal process where you, phone someone or go to a website. You just call me. And each site we work together. I work with Shauna quite closely on what we would like to fund in the area, and with Richard as well across Canada. So some of the things we have done, this was last year, with the North Island College, we are funding a 5-year land-based Indigenous high school completion program. And so that's one of the biggest issues in Indigenous communities with education is that lack of completion of high school. It's quite low here, in fact, the completion rate. And so that's one of the ones we wanted to support. So that's for 5 years. We also have done smaller things, like yesterday we got to go to it says food bank, but I was corrected by, it's not a bank, Jay. It is a food distribution center. So we went to the A-Frame Church in Port McNeill. They gave us a tour. We'd given them some money for a solar panel project that they're, because when the power is not available, food spoils and you're out of luck, right? So this is a way to keep that going. We did contribute to the Quagilt soccer field. That's how I know Nora May and the nice field that they've built by their little school. Because that hamper fund, which was a Christmas kind of, needy families or families in need. Palomi Days, we did a little bit of support there. And then we always will pick an emergency responder where we are and provide some support. So the fire department said they bought, what did they say the equipment was?
I think when they have to do
There specialty ropes.
scaling, scaling
For
down.
repelling. That's what we also provided them with some money. And Heather and I've had some discussions about, need, what focus you might like, where we might be able to contribute. The only thing I didn't tell you is that there is a cooling off period after an election. So it's 3 months. So yeah, just so you know. So yeah, they usually have a cooling off before and after. So yeah, just an issue for clearance, right? But we've been talking about funding some things. So yeah, we're happy to do that when we do it at every location.
Fantastic.
And that's it. That's the end of our presentation.
So thank you. Any questions?
Just thank you for coming
Yeah.
and sharing with what you're doing, and I like the remediation stuff for the Foreshore, because I know that in talking with Chief Tom Nelson before with regards to economic development concerns, and he always brought it up that one of the things that was really a deterrent with regards to their economic development was they didn't have any access to the Foreshore to be able to get their product out. And that was a really big roadblock for them in the past with regards to what they would like to see done at the site. Because they had a lot of people come in and say, oh, we can do this and this and this, but we need a place to be able to ship it out of, and have you got access to the marine? And they said no. So that basically killed that project for them, but.
And that's another driver, is to get that marine infrastructure out of there, relinquish those water lot leases, and so
They
someone
can-
else
they
can use
comply.
it. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, because I know they were pretty excited about that possibility in the future,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So that's really good news.
No,
Hopefully, it's on track.
It
Yeah.
all takes time, but. I know
Yes.
that, but at least it's happening. So,
Yes,
because for 25 years it didn't, so
yes.
that's a good part about it.
Trina or Fred?
I'd just like to say thank you for the presentation. It's good. It's interesting. It's always good to see what's going on at the mine site. And to thank BHP for being a good corporate citizen. I mean, we come from a resource community. We come from a country where mining has been quite present for centuries. And there are instances in the country and in our province where mines have been left as and abandoned, and it has posed issues for people around there and for people in the province and for all sorts of things. And that's not the case here. So it's good to see the corporate responsibility being taken for the site, and on an ongoing basis. That it's not a finite issue, that they're committed to remediation of the site and maintenance of the site in the long term. And from our perspective, from the district of Port Hardy, that's great. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Fred. Trina?
Well said, Fred.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I just want to thank you very much for your presentation. Learned a lot. I haven't been to the mine site since I think a high school tour when it was still in operation. So it's incredible to hear that you're such good stewards of the land and promise to continue to do so. So we certainly gratefully appreciate that.
awesome,
Thank you,
thank
Trina.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Looking forward to the tour.
Yeah.
I know, I have a smell of tour coming on.
Work it out through our CAO.
Yeah.
She organizes us.
Is there anything you'd like to share with us about, like special, like what keeps you up at night?
What keeps us up?
No personal stuff, right? But in terms of, running the district, what keeps you up? What's your?
Swimming pool?
How do you feel about buying a pool?
Yeah.
It's my pool, but.
You got a big one out there at the mine site, but
Yeah.
unfortunately I can't use it.
Probably not
It's swimming in that.
I'm quite user friendly.
So the swimming pool for sure, and the recreational need in the community. And I think for us, the pool is priority to get that back up and running and as quick as possible. And-
Yeah.
And I know that you've been in talk with Heather and you realize how much the cost of the pool has skyrocketed over what we had anticipated. So any help would be amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I actually read it on the website. I read it on your website as we were talking, and she said, I didn't know you did that. I go, oh, yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Like that, yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, we'd love to help if we can.
And I mean, we've got so many other.
Good jobs.
Well, housing.
Job like
Housing.
Maintaining good jobs here,
Yeah.
getting more good jobs.
Yeah, and that's all, and that
Tied into
revolves a little,
recreation, too.
a little around housing.
Recreation.
Because housing's in demand here, and we got, it's anywhere from 35% to 40% higher than anywhere else.
The demand.
For to build it.
Yeah, the
Because
cost.
of the cost of it all.
Crazy expensive.
It's very expensive. We've been plowing over the idea, and this is another hat, with the that I'm on. We're talking about small lots, so where seniors can go from their big house to a smaller
Mhm.
house, say 1,000 square feet, and have a front and backyard and things like that, so they can call their own. And then that vacates their house for somebody else to buy.
Yeah.
It's a win-win for us.
Right.
It's just not,
Especially when they don't need the house.
they don't
Right.
need a big house, but they still want their own independence.
Right.
You know, where we all do, we all want our own independence, but it could be on a smaller scale.
Yes.
And level entry.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, one level.
Yes.
A lot
Easier
of
to
the
maintain,
houses
easier to-
around here are built in the 70s and have got steps
By
up and
Utah
down.
mines.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Well, the Utah subdivision, we call it.
yeah.
well, yeah,
Still. Utah subdivision.
yeah, the house that I live in was mine manager's guest house.
Yeah.
That's the house I live in.
And I live in the mine manager's house.
Historic mark, right?
We want it to work.
So, yeah, you left a lot of infrastructure behind, like, I mean, let's face it, a lot of the area that we live in right now in this community was built by mine. So that had a huge impact on our community for what it is today. And let's face it, we are what we are today because of what the mine left.
What the wine left,
Yeah,
that's correct.
that's part of the infrastructure that we have to maintain, but it's all still intact, so it's great for our community. And we're hoping that you guys open up the next mine so we can double the size of our community and get things going again.
Yeah.
You never know, right?
The building cost, like that 35 to 40% additional, is that just because of where?
Where we are,
located?
and partly because there's so much work in the cities, you know, that really they don't want to come to small locations.
And we don't have the developers and.
Yeah.
So
It-
everything would be.
It all kind of,
Contract, everything has to come from somewhere. Well, not everything, but
Not everything, but.
it's a huge thing.
90% of it.
Yeah, I think when we tried to do the last application we put in for BC Housing for the North Island Seniors Housing Foundation, we have a group here that's trying to get what John was talking about, right? Small patio homes for seniors, and our last ask from the province was, there was a lot of people that applied, right? Let's face it, oversubscribed, there's always, but our costs were like, they said were per square foot were like $200 or $300 more per square foot than what they were billing in Campbell River. So that just took us right out of the game. Like, we can't even compete, you know, but they don't look at it that way. They look at dollars and cents per what they provide. They say, oh, you guys are too much. So then you gotta go back to the drawing board. We're in that right now, going back to the drawing board. It's like, how can we cut those costs so that we can be competitive? Because
That's a really tough,
oversubscribed, right?
multifaceted piece, because then you also have, if you're looking to attract seniors for that, then you also have the medical and healthcare
Yeah.
that goes along with that, you know,
It's
it's
just-
a tangly web.
well, it's the housing for everybody,
Yes.
Yeah.
you know, as professionals, as workers,
Yeah,
everybody needs
Somewhere to live.
somewhere to live.
Quite a substantial demographic that's older, like over 65. I can't remember what it is. but
Yeah,
I think it's higher. than that.
We're pretty close, at the senior center, we're pretty close to 300 members now,
Wow.
and we're a town of 4,200.
Okay. Yeah,
Now,
that's fine.
but not all of them live in Port Hardy. And not
No,
all,
no.
not all of them are over 55 or
I'm a
60.
No, they're not all.
And not all of them are on council either.
That's right.
So any help you can give the town, be greatly
I
appreciated.
would definitely like to speak on an issue you mentioned about keeping you up at night.
Yeah.
Probably the biggest issue besides affordable housing and that is our crisis downtown, which is our drugs, alcohol addiction.
That's gonna-
It's huge. That also ties into our healthcare problem, our burnout from our staff, from our first responders, our police, our ambulance attendants, our doctors, our nurses. What they have to deal with up there, they're becoming up there. I have a wife in healthcare, several friends in healthcare. The burnout that exceeds because of that is huge because they're dealing with the same things. They're becoming abused by some of it. There's just big issues because it comes down to, of course, affordable lack of housing. We lost a building here that housed a lot of them. And then so the lack of affordable housing and low income housing is a big factor in that, is massive. And just if we can't solve this issue, which is ongoing and growing, it is going to continue to get worse. And trying to come up with solutions is very difficult because it's a very tough situation. We all know that. But a big step is having some sort of treatment recovery center that bypasses the hospital so that that staff and first responders aren't constantly always dealing with that same issue, right? Because that they get the massive burnout from it. So it's huge, and it ties into a lot of issues that we have with our healthcare is, I guess, my biggest thing. And then, seeing it, I grew up in this community, a lot of people have, I know a lot of these people that are down there that are suffering from these issues and that don't have anywhere to go or any places to live or anything like that. So it's a tough one and it's a big one, and it's a huge thing in our community, and everybody sees it because it's at our downtown core and affects that, and then it affects the tourism. And then you start talking to people that come from out of town and see this right in front of their eyes when they're just coming here to visit and spend their money and that, or affecting, bringing people here for good jobs. If people come here to check out the town and look at it and say, okay, I want to get a job here, and then they go downtown and see this crisis we have going downtown, that might deter them from staying here. So it's a huge issue. It's one that I think about every day. I'm sure everyone does because we drive downtown every day and we see it every day. So trying to come up with a solution with that and having the money and the funding and all that, and everyone's working hard at it, but yeah, it's a tough one.
How long, because, so I used to come to Port Hardy years ago.
Yeah.
When I worked for a DFO. And I don't remember that.
Yeah,
being
it was
that
never, it's
So
been
really
around, but I would say in the last 5 years, it's
Okay.
really skyrocketed. In the last year even, it's gone in significantly worse. We lost an apartment building that housed a lot of these people. And so since then, you've seen it go down and down and down.
Yeah,
Right.
we've had some fires too.
Yeah, fires and it's just,
It's worse now. It's way more visible now.
Yeah.
Before, people were sleeping in the bush, and so it wasn't as visible. And now with the apartments being renovated, and people that used to squat in those houses or in the apartments or couch surf, now they can't couch surf there. So it's definitely an issue. There are a number of agencies and the district's working with the agencies on coming up with some ideas and trying to do different things. And the First Nations partners are starting to come to the table to look at different solutions and different ideas, but it's there. Unfortunately.
And the closest treatment center, like if I had an issue and I wanted treatment, I'd have to go to Campbell River?
No,
Further south, Nanaimo, Victoria, the closest treatment center for youth, I think is it in Victoria, the closest one? Trina, do you know where the closest one for youth is?
I think it might be Vancouver, actually, over, it might be Victoria, but not 100%.
GNN is working on the site in the deserters as well.
They're working on basically bringing a barge house out there donated by Moe to put together basically a healing center to bring people back to their traditional territories, teach them their traditional habits and everything like that. I actually got lucky enough to film something for them and put together a little film for them and got to hear it. So when Pat mentions that, we were working with local First Nations and stuff. seeing them get
Mhm.
involved and putting stuff together like that is huge as well, right?
Yeah, KFN also is thinking of something similar, because I had
Yes.
some discussions with them a while back.
Yeah.
And we gave just them ideas on how they could approach it.
Yeah.
In terms of
Mhm.
looking for things and support and,
Yeah.
I don't think you were there that day, but yeah, they're also looking.
Yeah.
So it just tells you that it's a whole of community.
Yes, everyone was trying to get together to.
It's an
solve the
issue.
problem.
Every community, like, I mean, some are worse than others, obviously, but you go down to Nanaimo, you go any of those cities or places, they've got all those issues are still there.
It's unfortunate though,
It's
you
terrible.
know, it's such an unfortunate situation, but I think when people come to Port Hardy, they think small town
Right,
and they
Yeah.
don't think small town, big city problems,
yeah,
right? And
Like,
that's what we've
yeah.
got is big city problems and it's a small town.
and there's nowhere to go, like those places when you mentioned, like, yeah, every city has 100%. But people tend to avoid those areas where when ours is our downtown core, there's not really anywhere else to go.
Yeah.
It's right there.
It's in
There's,
your face.
it's in your
every day.
face. There's no like, oh, let's just avoid this and go to this part of town. You can't. It's there, right? So.
Yeah.
It's tough.
I mean, the good news is Port Hardy is beautiful.
Yes,
Beautiful
absolutely.
space. I mean, you're in a beautiful location.
Yeah.
Stunning. And yeah, tourism definitely probably a big part of your future.
Absolutely.
Renewable energy as well, is that, obviously, since you've got energy issues, right, on the North
Mhm.
We
Island?
got the wind farm up there.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah, we're working on that.
Yeah, we're working on
oh, thanks for sharing those things, those are, yeah, really,
Thanks for listening.
yeah, it's very interesting to know, you hear all about what we do, but, we like to know what keeps you up at night. So hopefully, yeah, we'll, every month, cooling
Yes.
off period, and then we'll do an application process, we'll talk about
Mhm.
what'll work.
it. That'd be
I'll
awesome.
let you
Thank
know.
you.
Thank you, guys.
So it's ready.
So thank you, Richard and Sean and Jay for coming and really appreciate you doing the presentation and safe travels home and on your holiday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for having
Thanks,
us.
Claire.
Thank you.
Thanks
guys.
for coming,
Thank
you
you,
guys.
everybody.
Motion to adjourn.
Thanks. Thank you.